this work? So I can work for 5 minutes.
Hello. Welcome everyone to the Thematic Solution Forum 6, South-South and Triangular Cooperation in Sustaining Peace and Promoting Inclusive Development. We hope we can create a very interesting space to learn how Global South countries are promoting peace and citizens' participation. So we have a number of very distinguished speakers from various countries and organizations. We are also going to give you the chance to interact with them and ask questions. But before we start, I want to welcome Jorge, Mr. Jorge Tedier, Director of the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation and Envoy of the Secretary General on South-South Cooperation, to share some welcoming remarks and welcome you and all the speakers. Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you, Cecilia. When we were putting together in our office our strategic framework for the next 3 years, actually for this year and the next 2, we proposed that the idea of peace, the component peace and development, should be part of it. There was a lot of pushback. Some countries say, why should we incorporate that in South-South cooperation? And we quoted a phrase from the G77 Ministerial Declaration that says there is no sustainable development without peace and no peace without sustainable development. And at the same time, although there are a lot of mechanisms for exchanging and sharing experiences in this area, we decided that it would be a good opportunity, working in partnership, to identify a strictly South-South mechanism for the exchange of practices in peace and development. So we're very pleased we hired Cecilia to be part of our team to work on that. And building on some of the partnerships we had and on some new partnerships we are establishing, we're in the process of defining and identifying that particular space where the contribution of our office can add value to these initiatives, both at the global level and also at the individual level of the countries and organizations that participate here. We had a very good partnership with Colombia, which we hope will continue and expand in the next few years. We have a very good partnership with the G7 Plus, present here at this table. And we're in conversations with all the other, with the Commonwealth Secretariat, and we're in conversations with all the partners at the table and others, with the idea of expanding and establishing that space for strictly South-South cooperation in the construction, in peace and development, basically, how the two processes can help each other. In this panel, and I'm very impressed with the quality and the caliber of you as participants in this. There will be more sharing of what it is being done, and tomorrow we'll try to hear from you what do you think the next steps can be and how institutionally our office can contribute to your efforts. So I wish you success in your deliberations. You see me full of energy. This is the first of my 18 meetings scheduled for the rest of the day. But I'm very enthusiastic for the results and look forward to continue the cooperation. Welcome, and Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you very much. Good luck during your day. So just to start now with inviting the speakers to share their lessons, good practices, and policy recommendations on why and how we could do more and better South-South cooperation on sustaining peace. I maybe take 1 minute to introduce myself. My name is Cecilia Milesi. I'm the Senior Advisor on South-South Cooperation and Peace and Development. I'm very happy to be with all of you here as well. Thank you for making the effort to come to New York, those who are not from New York. Thank you to all the participants. And I hope that, as Jorge said, the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation can become a strong partner to facilitate, in particular, cross-regional sharing of lessons, solutions, and policy recommendations with the perspective of the Global South countries. Sometimes, for example, Latin America, Africa, Asia don't have the space to share cross-regionally, and the United Nations, it's in a good global space to facilitate that. So I hope that this is the beginning of a nice story. To start with our speakers, I want to introduce Ms. Ángela Ospina. She's the director of the Presidential Agency of International Cooperation of Colombia, APC Colombia. So we look forward now to, in the next 5 minutes, to listen to Ángela, and then another 2 speakers. And after 3 speakers, we will take a round of 2 questions, so we do the exchange as interactive as possible. Ángela, you have the floor.
So, good morning to Mr. Shediek, he already left, to Cecilia Milesi, to Rashid Maumid, to Ruitaro Muratoni, Patrice Shiwota, Igor Shedvoski, and Manuela Biandi. And to all of you, good morning. As the director of the Presidential Agency for International Cooperation, APC, that guides, coordinates, and articulates Colombia's cooperation, it's a pleasure to be part of this panel and to be able to share with all of you the experience of my country related with conflict resolution. My presence in this panel is explained by the importance that is given to peace building in the actual government of Mr. President Iván Duque. At the Colombian government, we have a strong commitment to achieve all the goals established as the SDG 16. Especially, I will share a practice that helped to solve daily conflicts in order to prevent serious coexistence problems. One of the greatest challenges in South-South cooperation is the identification of those practices that can be shared with countries with similar development levels, with common problems and common challenges. In order to make a specific contribution to this discussion, we designed a tool named Saber Hacer Colombia. In English, Know How Colombia, which its main objective is the identification and documentation of successful experience that can be shared through South-South and Triangle cooperation. Within the framework of the approval of the Agenda 2030 and its Sustainable Development Goals, and due to the constant discussion about the South-South cooperation, the Saber Hacer tool allows identifying the Sustainable Development Objectives, goals, and global indicators to which a good practice contributes. By this way, this tool contributes to the achievement of the SDG number 17, Partnerships for the Goals. In that sense, we identified a program from Colombia's Ministry of Justice titled Houses of Justice as an experience that has contributed to the peaceful coexistence in the country and that can be shared through the South-South cooperation or Triangle cooperation. Because it helps to facilitate access to justice for all the citizens. It is important to understand that in Colombia, as many other countries, one of the main reasons of death is related with street fights among men and feminicides for women. One of the main goals of this strategy to prevent the occurrence of those crimes through the peaceful solution of the daily conflicts. The Houses of Justice in Colombia are conceived as interinstitutional centers that facilitate the access of the community of a certain municipality to formal and non-formal justice services. There, users find free and fast attention to their requirements, but above all, they have the possibility to solve their problems through alternative methods such as conciliation and mediation. At the Houses of Justice, it's possible to solve problems such as tenures, noise-related problems, but also can be received orientation about issues such as domestic violence, gender-based violence, or land limits problems. This model has instruments that have strengthened the relationship between institutions and civil society in different parts of the country, which can be replicated in contexts with similar characteristics, taking into account that it responds to an institutional strategy for the construction of Pacific environments, conflict resolutions, and peace building. In this way, the Houses of Justice respond to the legal access established at the National Development Plan by our President, Mr. Ivan Duque. This axis seeks to consolidate the social state under the rule of law to ensure the access to effective justice. Responding in this way to SDG 10 related to the reduction of inequalities and the SDG 16 related with peace, justice, and strong institutions. Due to the above, our government will continue to strengthen the actions of these programs and proposes to enhance the work in rural areas. This experience has already been shared by Colombia within the framework of cooperation with Argentina. This country requests from Colombia through the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights the strengthening of the alternative resolution mechanisms and other public policies related with access to justice. Something that happens during this implementation, as occurs with many other South-South cooperation projects, is that from this action, a request that starts from Argentina, it ends to a binational good practices guide. Taking in account the information mentioned above, the South-South cooperation must continue contributing to peace building and development, and in the current context to the SDG 16 related with peace, justice, and sustainable development. It is important to consider this type of initiatives arises from a need of a southern country that identifies in another southern country a good practice that fits in its needs and that can be transferred to its local context. As we mentioned before, we have a tool named Saber Hacer, which includes a set of methodological guides in order to document, classify, and validate development experience. This guide allows us to evaluate the outcomes of the experience in order to share them with other countries, strengthen capacities, and identify innovative practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela. With the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation has been working very closely with you, and we know how Saber Hacer and the methodology of documentations that you offer not only to Latin America but many regions of the world is extremely important, because basically documentation of knowledge and good practices is key if we want to make progress in promoting South-South cooperation, and in particular the case of access to justice and alternative dispute resolutions in a context of transitions and post-conflict is extremely important to create healing and new bonds in our societies. So thank you so much for the example. I want to introduce now to Mr. Rashid Mahuddin. Rashid is the Deputy Director for International Non-Governmental Organizations and South-South Cooperation in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. And I also hope that we can have some interesting learnings from your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. I would like to share with you a pilot project that is relatively new approach in the context of peace building mechanism, which is related with South-South cooperation. and triangular cooperation. The project is the peace building through cross-border local economic development in Indonesia and Timor-Leste border. The theme of the project was actually initiated during the meeting between Indonesia and Norway foreign ministers in September 2017 in New York. And during the meeting, both ministers were mainly discussing about peace-building efforts through South-South cooperation that could engage developed countries and the UN bodies. Indonesia underlined the importance of peace-building efforts in post-conflict countries through creative and innovative global cooperation. This initiative then followed up through the project between Indonesia and Norway and implemented by UNDP branch office in Indonesia. And this initiative seeks to promote peace building between two village communities in Napan, which is in part of Indonesia, and Oesilo in the part of Timor-Leste, in an enclave territory, through the development of the local economy of these two bordering areas. The project aims to create economic interdependence. That's we emphasize on that, creating economic interdependence between the two border communities through joint planning and activities. And it is also expected that higher volume and intensity of cross-border economic exchanges among the local communities can reduce cross-border communal conflicts and, most importantly, maintain peace. And we have some operations, as you can see from my slide over there. We are still in the process of doing those operations. And this program is expected to be completed in 2 years. And this program has been started since December 2017. And after that, we expect the program will be sustained by the local government, supported by the private sectors surround the border areas. And prior to the implementation of the project, there are several main descriptions of the border areas as the following. But I would like to emphasize on the last 2 points at the slide that the potential of conflicts among border communities remain high, and the level of poverty in border communities is high. There were not much productive economic activities, so it leads to limited economic exchanges. Ladies and gentlemen, based on the rapid market assessment conducted in both areas, it is identified that potential commodities to be developed in both villages are namely tamarind, candle nut, in cattle. We have come to decision that, to conclusion that there are 3 agricultural products are going to be developed in the project. And following consultations and recommendations from relevant stakeholders in both areas, the project focuses on capacity building related to the good agricultural practices and production of value-added products of tamarind and candle nut. And also we focus on cattle fattening methodologies and provision of production equipments. And the next slide is about the timeline that we have been doing so far. We set up a team, a joint team consisting of UNDP Indonesia, Indonesia authorities, and also Norway embassies in Jakarta. From December to December 2017, we have introductory mission conducted in Indonesia and also in Timor-Leste. And in February 2018, we conducted rapid market assessment. And in May 2018, joint mission conducted to engage with stakeholders in Indonesian part, which is in Napan. And in June, we went deeper, have meeting with Provincial Agriculture Authority in Indonesian part. And in August, we went to Timor-Leste, a joint mission we conducted to engage with stakeholders in Timor-Leste. We covered both sides. And there are some results to date, such as we have a concept note on the project formulated and agreed by stakeholders. We have also strong support from relevant Indonesian government agencies from national level to the village level. We have strong buy-in from Timor-Leste and commitment to work with UNDP for coordination and implementation, close coordination also. We try to align with UNDP in Timor-Leste, and we also gather support from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia in inter-agencies coordination. And the most important is sustainability plan is ensured through proper planning, stakeholder engagement, and joint activities. I would like to conclude a little bit the presentation that this initiative is being done under the trilateral agreement between Indonesia, Norway, and UNDP. Ultimately, the goal of this cooperation is to sustain peace in the bordering communities by improving the well-being of all the community members in the target border area through promotion of local economic development activities. While there have been various peace building and local economic development programs applied in other contexts, the program is exploring the potential of combining peace building effort and local economic development under the framework of South-South and triangular cooperation. I thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rasil. I think that from your presentation, I would like to remark the importance of economic development and economic interdependence, agricultural development in particular in cross-border areas,
sure,
where some of these our most complex conflicts are taking place, and the border areas that are sometimes marginalized from decision-making in some contexts or have less access to economic opportunities. So linking the economic aspects of peace building and sharing an example that is not only about other things that we know more, like, for example, transitional justice or security responses is also very important. So I thank you for your example. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ryutaro Murutani, Director and Deputy Head of the Office of Global Issues and Development Partnership of JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, for him to share lessons from JICA experience.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, and good morning to everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor to be part of this important panel. So I'm going to share some experiences from JICA's engagement in triangular cooperation, focusing on the peace building. So as you are already aware, JICA is a development assistance organization of the government of Japan. And in the next slide, I just want to share that the history of the Japanese cooperation. Japan started its development assistance in 1954 when we ourselves were undergoing our own country's development as well as reconstruction from the damages of the Second World War. And JICA was established in 1974, and in the next year, 1975, we started our first triangular cooperation with Thailand in the method of third country training program. So I would like to say that the triangular cooperation and the South-South cooperation are at our heart of collaboration. And we are continuing various types of triangular cooperation. I will be introducing three cases that is related to our peace building efforts. So in the next slide, the first case is on our collaboration with Cambodian Mine Action Center. And you may already know that Cambodia suffered from the civil war in the 80s. And since the 1990s, we have been supporting the capacity development of Cambodian Mine Action Center. And through the long years of experiences, the Cambodian Mine Action Center, called CMAC, is now very, very experienced. And no other countries in the world has faced as severe problem of landmines as in Cambodia. So the CMAC is, in a sense, the most experienced organization in terms of demining. And they are more and more experienced than the Japanese experts. So now we realized that there are other countries who are facing the similar problems. So we have asked Cambodian colleagues to go to other part of the world, and we started our collaboration, triangular cooperation in Cambodia, Colombia first, and I'm glad to learn that DG Ospina is well aware of our collaboration in Colombia. And then we expanded that triangular cooperation to other countries, Laos, PDR, Angola in Africa, and most recently in Iraq. So we have, next slide, we have some summaries of how CIMAC was helping other institutions in post-conflict and mine-affected countries in terms of capacity building of their own institutions. So the second example I would like to share is our support to the capacity development of Afghan female police officers. So it is our efforts to support the Afghan police officers, capacity building of the national police forces. And we have an emphasis on the female police officers because of the severe violence against women in Afghanistan, as well as the lack of capacity of female police officers in Afghanistan. And in this program, we found our Turkish counterpart as a very strong institution to provide training on the gender-based, on the countermeasures on the gender-based violence. So we have conducted several series of workshops. So we have reached 1,000 female officers from Afghanistan, which is roughly 30% of female Afghan police officers have been trained under this collaboration with Turkey. And we have different triangular cooperations to support the peace building of Afghanistan, vocational training with Iran. We have another collaboration with Cambodia on the maternal and child health. And we have also collaboration with India to support Afghanistan. And I think we are trying to build our regional efforts to support Afghanistan's peace building. And the final case I would like to share is, again, Cambodian support to South Sudan. And we are helping the South Sudan urban water utility company for their capacity development. And in that effort, we have invited our experts from the South Sudan first to Uganda and then to Cambodia. And you might know that the Cambodian Phnom Penh Water Supply Authority is one of the best water utility company in Southeast Asia. And their own experiences building capacities from the scratch after the civil war is a important experience that can be shared to other water utility companies, not only from the fragile states, but for the South Sudanese counterpart. It was a very important experiences to visit Cambodia, because they have faced similar problems of building a new institution from the scratch 20-some years ago. And South Sudan is facing the similar challenges. And it is a very, how can I say, there are many commonalities. And the experts from South Sudan is now realizing that Cambodia have done this much, so that why not South Sudan? So I think that's a very important experience for them as well. So next slide, I just wanted to summarize what I would like to share from these three cases. The first message I want to convey is that South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation is effective even in the fragile situations. And first of all, there are many unique knowledges and experiences in post-conflict countries. So CIMAC of Cambodia is a very good example, where there is one of the world's best institutions in terms of demining. And the other aspect of unique experiences is that institution building after the war is starting from the scratch. So that's very, very different from building a capacity from existing institutions. So that experience of Phnom Penh is very unique to be shared to other post-conflict situations. And in the Turkish example, to support Afghanistan, I just mentioned that there is it is an effort to build a regional effort to support peace building in Afghanistan. And triangular cooperation can add value by facilitating knowledge sharing and mutual learning. So JICA was trying to find a appropriate partner that from the fragile states that can, or post-conflict states that can share the lessons to other partners. So I think it was a very unique support from us to encourage CMAC or PPWSA in Phnom Penh to share their experiences to other peace building, other countries' experiences in peace building. And one thing I should mention here is that building bonds and confidence by sharing tough experiences is very, very effective. So everyone who was engaged in this type of collaboration shares an experiences that it's a very touchy experiences, that the tragedies they faced, they experiences. There are some commonalities amongst them. So I think the idea of having a G7 plus is coming from this idea of sharing the experiences and sharing the experiences of the tragedy and the recovery and reconstruction. So I think that's one additional value for the South-South cooperation in the peace building aspect. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the reference.
Thank you so much, Ryutaro. That was a very integral presentation. Thank you for bringing the fact that of the importance of creating confidence and bonds between our countries, that so many of us have gone through similar challenges, recognizing our common history, sometimes our common suffering, but also our common hope and capacity to overcome all these challenges, and how partners from developed countries like Japan can understand, value that, and partner in a very respectful way. Final thing that I can remark from your presentation is your holistic approach, your holistic perspective. It's not only about one or two SDGs, but it's talking about water, it's talking about access to water, gender sensitivity, demining, which is important for everyday life. So that complexity we have when we talk about peace and development. So thank you very much. So as I mentioned, now I want to give you the opportunity to share 2 questions and reflections with the speakers that you heard first. We have 4 minutes to do that if we want to stick to our agenda. If anyone raised the hand very quickly, I can have 1 man and 1 woman, just to have a 50-50 gender justice. And please introduce yourself, ask your question and reflection to whom is directed. So I see 1 man there raising hand. Anyone else wants to share a question? 1 question, good. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Ahmed Hussein Ahmed. I am the regional advisor for Arab State, Division for Arab State, Europe and CIS, UN Office for South-South Cooperation. I would like just to compliment of what Indonesia and also JICA has already reflected in this perspective. Taking into consideration what you have said clearly, your moderator, that the economic aspect which has been implemented in the border within the Indonesia, their review and their views, I think this is a very substantial and very important element of how to sustain peace in such a conflict area. I bring this to the attention because we have a very clear experience that's between Sudan and South Sudan, which is, it started in 1993 with what we call it the peace markets. And after that, it developed, and after that, I think the conflict arose again. And recently, there is a huge potential and political will from the both parties when peace took place in, with the support of IGAD, and then recently with the support of the government of Sudan, because there is a lot of economic interest between the 2 countries. You know that the new energy resources. This is one of the elements of the conflict, not in Sudan and South Sudan, but in Africa as a whole. And this is one of the challenges that's also stand as also one of the threats of the peace. And then the roads also between the two countries, it has been reconstructed, agricultural development, and many agreements that has been already endorsed by the two governments. And we hope that this can go further. In terms of policy recommendations, we as the region, we would like to put together the bilateral and also the triangular cooperation in place. We have already, there is many countries that they have their will, especially JICA, the Japanese government through JICA. And as well also we have from our brothers from the Arab countries as well, because they have also a substantial contribution in peace building. In Darfur we have Qatar and also other countries within the countries of Sudan. So I think triangular cooperations already exist in these two, and we already have a policy dialogue between the government of South Sudan within South-South cooperation, and they have the interest, and we will go further to cement that agreement. This is my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing the experience of Sudan and South Sudan and your points, important points. One more option if someone wants to, okay? One more question is not a woman, but still. And then we move to the next speakers.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Muhire Antoine, and I'm from Rwanda. So I'm very sensitive when JICA spoke because if I can quickly share what they are doing in Rwanda, it shows how such triangular cooperation is very important. In Rwanda, they have a college called Tumba College. Right after the conflict, this college was built by JICA in collaboration, of course, with the Rwandan government. And the main mission of this college is to build a capacity for that youth. Because as you know, after the conflict, there is a huge gap of people who are capable to build. And how does it relate to the peace and reconciliation is simply when you bring young people together and teach them something that really is interesting like technology, they forget their conflict or other division they used to have, like ethnics. I think everyone knows what happened in Rwanda. So it's really important to have such triangular cooperation, and I think I wanted to commend JICA for such job. And again, forgive me, I forget to mention what I do. I am the CEO of Rwanda Cooperation Initiative, which is a government agency of development. And what we do, we are coordinating all the South-South cooperation between African countries and Rwanda. So on that regard also, what JICA taught Rwanda is now being a source of interest for other African countries. They come to Rwanda to learn how have been able to recover so quickly. And what we do most often, we bring them back to JICA College Tumba and say, this is one of the ways to really bring people who used to be divided together, is you bring them together, teach them something new, and then they will forget whatever divided them, and they find a common purpose. So it wasn't a question, it was just to commend the experience from JICA. And as you mentioned, it's a practical and concrete way of really building the reconciliation piece. So thank you again for that opportunity.
Thank you so much for now bringing the experience from Rwanda. I must say that I really wanted to have someone from Africa in this panel, and it was impossible for different reasons. But I'm happy that now we are taking the opportunity to listen to both of you just now before we move ahead. So thank you so much. So I want to now give the floor to Patrice Chiwota, who is the Senior Program Officer of the Peacebuilding Support Office of the United Nations. The Peacebuilding Support Office is doing an amazing work in connecting all the United Nations agencies and promoting peace building, and we are proud that our office is working very closely with them. So over to you, Patrice.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the introduction. And again, just to recap, my name is Patrice Chiwota. I'm the Senior Program Officer in the United Nations Peacebuilding Support Office, better known as the PBSO. When the Gambia underwent a significant political transition in 2016, the new government requested assistance in consolidating its peace. It identified two major priorities where they needed the assistance of the United Nations and the international community. It made a commitment to undertake comprehensive security sector reforms. The government also took a decision to implement a transitional justice process to ensure accountability, reconciliation, and healing. The government then followed up, with a specific request to the United Nations for help, in responding, in these two priority areas that I've mentioned. And so our head of office, visited Gambia a number of times to engage with the leadership, and this resulted in the approval of two projects that were funded by the Secretary General's Peacebuilding Fund, what we call the PBF, the Secretary General's Peacebuilding Fund. And these were two projects. One of them was supporting, as I said, security sector reforms, helping the government to articulate a comprehensive strategy to reform its security sector. The second project was to help implement transitional justice in the Gambia. And again, these were priorities that were carefully chosen because they were building on the lessons and experience that Gambia had gone through. One of the requests that the government made when we started the process of helping them to articulate strategies in these areas, the government wanted to learn from the experiences of other countries. And it did not want to learn from anyone else, but countries that had similar experiences to what Gambia had gone through. They wanted to visit South Africa to go and learn from their truth and reconciliation experience. They also wanted to visit a country like Sierra Leone, a neighboring country like, close to Gambia like Sierra Leone, which had gone through a very difficult conflict, but had made significant strides in rebuilding its security sector, but also to try and learn from that experience. The Secretary General's Peacebuilding Fund that I mentioned about, that is administered on behalf of the Secretary General by the Peacebuilding Support Office, facilitated for the government officials to visit these countries and learn from these experiences, and also to draw lessons and in their own processes of developing. This is a classic example of how South-South cooperation can be made to work in countries that are emerging out of conflict or political crisis. And I can maybe cite another example that is worth, I think, mentioning. Again, Guinea-Conakry, when it underwent a political transition following the death of the long-serving president, one of the requests that the government made, the new president who came to power, who came from civil society actually, did not know very much the structure of the key state institutions. So one of the things that he did is that he wanted help in understanding the nature and profile of the security sector in Guinea-Conakry. So one of the things that we recommended as the United Nations was to do a census of the military. And the best lesson and example, that Guinea could benefit from was South Africa. So we helped facilitate a team of experts who have undertaken similar exercises in South Africa to come to the Gambia and help the government to undertake a comprehensive census of the military, which helped to identify the profile of the military, the ethnic representation, the age. And it actually was able to provide the new president with a lot of information on how the military had been used at that time to be able to influence, how the political processes in the country. The reason why I'm started by mentioning these two examples, it just demonstrates the potential that is there for South-South cooperation in peace building. And I'm actually also not happy to say, we have not been doing enough in facilitating this sharing of lessons and experiences between countries in the South. I think the potential is there. When the Peace Building Fund was established by the General Assembly in 2006, one of the unique characteristics that was given to this fund, which is a unique instrument, if I can be able to mention, the member states agreed that this instrument should be flexible, it should be fast, it should be responsive, it should be risk-taking, and it should be catalytic. It's not a big fund, but it has potential to do things that other bilateral programs are not able to do. And through this instrument, the scope and potential is there to be able to tap into the lessons and experiences of other countries. And we would like maybe going forward to try and see if we can tap on this potential that this instrument, brings, and be able to ensure that we can be able to track and monitor the support that can be provided, the needs that can be supported through South-South cooperation. The scope and potential is there, but I think, as I said, we hope, this particular engagement that we are involved in together with our colleagues in South-South cooperation will open a window of opportunity for us to do much more. If I can also conclude by saying one of the major things that we have also facilitated under the UN peace-building architecture that was introduced together with this fund has been to use the platform of the Intergovernmental Peace-Building Commission to share lessons and experiences. And I can actually be able to mention that my colleague here, Indonesia, has been actually one of our biggest advocates of South-South cooperation. Whenever countries are being considered or being discussed, at the Peace-Building Commission, Indonesia has actually been a very strong advocate. But we have seen more and more countries bringing forward their lessons and experiences, and sharing them with other countries that are going through political transition. I'll stop here, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrice, for remarking the potential of South-South cooperation, which I hope we from today, but with a lot of commitment can follow up. So we create the institutional space, the frameworks, with the funding mechanisms to make these exchanges more sustainable, systematic, and coherent. As you said, the South-South cooperation have catalytic power, and when the demand comes from the countries of the global South, also the transformative power is important. So thank you for remarking that. I'm now going to give the floor to Igor Chekhovsky, something like that. Igor is also one of our closest partners. We are building the interagency mechanism, bringing all the focal points from agencies working in South-South cooperation. Igor is a global focal point for land, property, and reparation of the International Organization for Migration from the United Nations. So we really look forward also to listen to your insights.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Cecilia, for the introduction, and thank you for the organizers for inviting IOM and myself to speak at this very interesting event. My name is Igor Cvetkovsky. It's particularly difficult to pronounce the surname. I'm hailing from Macedonia, but I work for the International Organization for Migration since 1999, and I have been responsible at the moment, as well as before, for global support on land property reparations, transitional justice issues to many countries across the globe. Many of the people that I talk to when I speak at events or I have meetings, they're not fully aware that IOM has such a unit and such an activity. For us, this is very important because it's part and parcel of finding sustainable solutions to displacement, sustainable peace, national reconciliation, and finding durable solutions for people who have been forced from their homes because of conflict. Over the years, we have worked in many countries, and that's one of the ways how we have actually facilitated South-to-South collaboration. So we are part, not only IAM, but any other international organization of this equitation of a triangular approach. In a way, every single UN agency, an international NGO, local NGOs, they facilitate this triangular approach where they exchange the ideas between the countries. Over the years, we have worked on some of the projects and countries that have been already mentioned here, and we have been involved, for example, we have been supporting the government of Colombia in the implementation of the Victims' Law. We have been supporting the government on Sierra Leone with the support of the Peacebuilding Fund to design and implement a reparation mechanisms for the victims of the conflict. We have been working in countries like Nepal, Sri Lanka, Iraq, and other countries as well. Most recently, we organized a major international conference that was at the beginning of this year in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, an international conference on reparations, which was exactly the way how the exchange of ideas and experiences between countries should be facilitated. In this conference, we had plenty of countries being represented, Colombia and both Sierra Leone being one of them who were there. We also had a representation from East Timor, from Philippines, from other locations. We found that the exchange of ideas in a crucial moment, the country needs to make a decision how they're going to go in the process in terms of reconciliation, peace, justice, reparations mechanisms, restitution of land and property is critical. Because many countries think, and many individuals living in these countries, including policymakers, including intellectuals, including ordinary people, think that their situation is unique. And by all means, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. That's very clear. But what's also very clear, what's very clear from what we have found out is that there are many similarities. There is no particularly unique position. Working on transitional justice, reparations, land and property restitution helped us to actually see this and to help facilitate this exchange of ideas and best practices between countries. The transitional justice concept and idea, as you might imagine, and many of you would know, came out exactly of a sort of a triangular approach, and it has two streams, one which was developed in the global south, especially in the countries of Latin America, in terms of truth and reconciliation processes going on after the periods of dictatorship, and the other stream of which feeds the transitional justice theory and practice comes from what happened in Europe following the Second World War with the Nuremberg trials. So these are the two streams that feeds the transitional justice. Therefore, it exactly reflects this triangular approach that we aim to have. Going forward, I will try to leave more time for questions, but just want to highlight a couple of trends when it comes to South-to-South collaboration that I see coming out in the future. There is a lot of discussion these days happening about what is called the humanitarian development nexus. Then at some point we realized that there is not really a humanitarian development nexus, but there is a humanitarian development and peace nexus. And at some point, if you look at the issues between peace and development, we will find the issue of justice. So we are talking not about humanitarian peace development nexus, now we are talking about humanitarian peace justice development nexus. So I think we need to pay attention to these issues, and this will come up probably further into discussions about the HDN a lot. The other trend that I see is that the South countries, the countries which belong to the global South, are taking initiative, are becoming a beacon for good initiatives and for sharing experience. And if we just look at the winners of the Nobel Prize for Peace this year, Dr. Mukwege and Nadia Murad, we see that both of them hail from a country which belong to the global South, and they got actually the award because of the issues which are very pertinent to the global South. And through their initiatives and through their advocacy, they advance some of the issues of the global South. Working for the migration, International Organization for Migration, I realized that one of the issues which is important to the global South, as well as to everyone else, is the human rights of migrants and the violations of human rights of migrants in situations of crisis especially. And that's something that I see as a trend that needs to be discussed in the triangular approach when it comes to the South-to-South collaboration. The third trend that I also see, which affects the Global South, where we as IAM will also remain engaged and seize upon, is the issues which are related to climate change and the issues which are related to displacement related to climate change, the plant relocation, and from my personal perspective as a professional in the area, the land and property issues linked to the climate change and plant relocations. So these are the topics that I can globally canvass and see it as an important topics in the South-to-South collaboration and the possible triangular approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Igor. Thank you so much for bringing also the experience from Latin America and transitional justice. I'm from Argentina, and I can tell you how strong I feel and work about that, feel about that. But in particular, also, I think from your presentation is this challenge of connecting the dots and creating the nexus between development, peace, humanitarian approaches. We need to be holistic, and that also means that we need to think together how to work in a very different way. The United Nations, the regional organizations are really trying to break silos and connect the dots. This is not easy. It seems that we have long history of working in separated niches, but we need to make an effort to work more together and bring all the collective intelligence from our teams and our countries. So thank you for bringing the Nexus challenge. We move now to our sixth speaker. We are kind of okay with time, but I give you Manuela Viana Trindade. She's a professor from the Institute of International Relations of the Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro and a researcher from the BRICS Policy Center for the United Nations Office of South-South Cooperation. Bringing this component of independent research led from the Global South is also very important, so we wanted to invite the BRICS Policy Center as one of our partners in the Global South Thinkers to bring perspective from the academia. So your turn, Manuela.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. That was the perfect analytical hook for my presentation. So I would like to contribute to the reflections that were already put on the table by my colleagues and focus on how Global South perspectives and tools, most especially South-South cooperation, can contribute to make this intricate relation between peace and development a virtuous reality. The discussion to take place at BAPA Plus 40 and the central position of peace and development in the 2030 agenda constitute a favorable political momentum for the construction of a more robust South-South cooperation, in my view. In this process, there are a couple of fundamental questions to be addressed. The first one would be, what contributions can South-South cooperation bring to the peace and development agenda? Secondly, how can a more definite and robust incorporation of peace and development into South-South cooperation enhance South-South cooperation itself? Thirdly, what principles are indispensable for no one to be left behind? And finally, how to take stock of what has already been done, a point that has already been raised by my colleagues here also. Next slide, please. One of the already existent initiatives that has a lot to contribute in this regard is the Peace and Development Global South Thinkers Group. This group was officially launched in an event held in October in Guatemala and is supported by the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation as an inclusive and diverse community sharing the common experience and challenge of dealing with peace and development in their routine, in their daily lives. For the GSSD Expo in particular, the group actively participated in the discussions leading to the production of the paper titled The Case for South-South Cooperation on Peace and Development by Isabel Rocha of the BRICS Policy Center in Rio de Janeiro. Here, I would like to present the main recommendations the paper offers in the context of BAPA Plus 40 and the 2030 Agenda. So the first domain, please, next slide. Next one. The first domain of these recommendations would be learning. Next slide, please. this learning, this constantly necessary oxygen for the worldviews informing policies and projects operating in the intersections of peace and development. So the paper recommends makes three main recommendations in this domain. First, that the countries invest in the production of systematic knowledge on current peace and development initiatives from a Global South perspective. Secondly, that they learn from process-oriented methodologies produced in the South. And finally, that they map what lessons can be learned from regional and cross-regional experience regarding South-South cooperation on peace and development. You can go on. And now, one more, please. Thanks. As for a second important dimension, here is the doing. So I would like, there are also three main recommendations in this regard. The first one, to include in national documents and speeches already taking place, in the discussions already taking place in the preparations for the BAPA plus 40, to include in these documents descriptive and prescriptive thoughts on South-South cooperation on peace and development. Secondly, still on the doing domain, to enhance multi-stakeholder partnerships in South-South cooperation initiatives on peace and development, a point that has already been made systematically in this Expo. And finally, to move from effectiveness to coherence when discussing the role of South-South cooperation on peace and development. That is, to assess not only results, but also the processes that led to them, as well as the principles guiding these processes and results. Finally, and then I finish, a third dimension is learning while doing. After all, the hands-on world never stops while we are thinking what could be done better, right? So here is it's fundamental that countries mobilize both qualitative and quantitative analysis in monitoring and evaluation systems. Secondly, that they strengthen southern channels and mobilize UN bodies aiming at improving cross-regional information flow and experience sharing. And finally, that they encourage southern countries to work on a cohesive discourse on their commitment regarding peace and development. These recommendations are promising paths for us to build a robust institutional fabric of South-South cooperation in the era of transformation. Such a process is of extreme relevance in the context of BAPA plus 40 and the 2030 agenda, but also in a context of where many countries in Latin America, for instance, have been reconsidering the South as a privileged site for the articulations of solutions to development. The draft version of the paper that I just walked you through is available here at the Expo and will be discussed in more details tomorrow in the side event titled The Case for South-South Cooperation on Peace and Development in conference room number 1, this very place, at 12 o'clock. You are welcome to join us in the side event. Meanwhile, I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Manuela. The paper, as Manuela said, is going to be presented tomorrow, Friday, at 12 p.m. At the conference room 11. So obviously there is a lot of recommendations and a lot of findings from this Global South research, and we will have more time to discuss it properly there, so you are all invited. But now that Manuela is bringing to our attention concrete recommendations towards, as we prepare for the second high-level United Nations Conference on South-South Cooperation in Buenos Aires in March 2018, and maybe going to go outside of the plan, and perhaps ask all the panelists if you can share. Elder will have the opportunity at the end to give his closing remarks, so you can add your thoughts there, Elder, if you think. But if you can take 30 seconds to say something to those diplomats and government officials and other stakeholders now starting the negotiations towards the outcome document of BAPA plus 40, what do you tell them if you know that they're listening to you? What are your concrete recommendations? So maybe perhaps starting in the same order or any order you want, maybe with Angela. I can see Angela is ready to speak. Just 10 seconds to what would you tell them on what to take in consideration?
In 10 seconds, I think there's also very important to find a method. How can we validate the South-South cooperation? because it's something that we really don't appreciate. It's a big effort for the countries who contribute with this cooperation, and we don't have a specific method to evaluate this cooperation. I think it's something that we have to keep working on it, because to measure the impact, we also have to measure the efforts that we are giving in this kind of cooperation.
Thank you. Rosie, you want to share 10 seconds your thoughts of what you tell the policymakers preparing for BAPA?
Thank you. Cecilia, I just need less than 10 seconds, I think. This is just to emphasize that we have to be more creative and collaborative in making the peace building to sustain through through non-traditional mechanisms, and we have just to make sure that the sustainability and the inclusivity, and also we engage more stakeholders to make the peace building sustain and durable. Thank you.
Thank you. Rutiara?
So I think, as I mentioned in my wrap-up, I think there's an untapped potential in the South-South and triangular cooperation in the field of peace building and sustainable development. So I think there must be mechanisms to encourage more, to realize more untapped potentials towards the peace building. And I think one way to do that is a triangular cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrice?
In 10 seconds, I think we should practice what we preach. If there is no sustainable development without peace, and there is no peace without sustainable development, I think BOPA Plus 40 should include sustainable development in its outcome resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Igor?
Well, one recommendation, in addition to what was said, would be to keep the individuals and communities who are affected by the decision-making processes involved, and help them participate in the process in a meaningful way, and thereby they can help you shape the policies that you're going to develop. Thanks.
Thank you. Manuela, you mentioned a few already, but if you want to add something?
I think bridging expertise is key in this process also. I mean, to connect the silos, as you mentioned. That's it, the main message.
Thank you very much. So we have 15 minutes to conclude this session. We have two special guests I want to give the floor, at least to share some ideas before we try to do a final closing remarks. One is Dina Al-Arkan, who is the Program Manager and Deputy Director General of the Palestinian International Cooperation Agency, PICA, who has been recently created. Dina, because you are here, it would be great to listen to you at least a couple of minutes, what you are doing and how you see the role of South-South cooperation and peace. And then Claire Stark, strategic planning, especially at UNESCO, who is also a very close partner working on education for peace. So, please.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Cecilia. I'm honored to share with you our experience in PICA and the relationship between PICA, South-South cooperation, and global peace. Actually, PICA is created and established by a presidential decree in 2016. And it's a mechanism actually to share solidarity, show gratitude, and promote contributions. Its creation is a reflection of a deep faith in the national responsibility towards the international community, and it's an expression of appreciation for the support given to Palestine over the years. PICA is the national coordinator for South-South cooperation. It maximizes knowledge sharing, enriches development cooperation, develops international development process that exists in the South, and enhances the positive role of Palestine as an agent of positive change in the world, given all the challenges and challenges and the limited resources we do have. Palestine is honored to capitalize on its efforts to contribute to the international efforts in the field of development and humanitarian cooperation. In the last 2 years, the State of Palestine is proud to contribute to resilient development policy making through technical cooperation and more than 20 projects and sharing through development. PICA is mandated to deploy Palestinian human capital to design, implement, and co-organize sustainable development solutions through South-South cooperation that contributes to achieving 2030 agenda in order to play an active role in having a resilient world united by solidarity through development. PICA envisages that sustainable development and durable peace becomes a reality through fruitful international cooperation and solidarity within a just and prosperous international community, leaving no one behind. Guided by solidarity through development, PICA is shaping a new humanitarian development partnership between the State of Palestine and other developing countries. PICA values partnership, fosters collaboration, and seeks to mobilize its relevant and adaptable experience to provide technical cooperation and humanitarian assistance. PICA orients towards the achievement of internationally agreed development goals with other partners in the Global South, and because achieving all of those goals will sustain peace. PICA encourages all global actors to strongly improve multilateral mechanisms, enhance international cooperation and collective governance, invest in South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation to jointly develop creative and innovative solutions that contribute to end conflicts, wars, and occupation, accelerate global governance and influence, and promote durable peace, dignity, prosperity, and development for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are very happy to have you here, and I know our regional teams from the office is working very closely with you, so I hope this continues. Before taking a couple of questions and then giving the floor to Elder Da Costa, Secretary General of the G7+, to share some closing remarks and final thoughts from this session, I wanted to give Claire 1 minute to share your experience from UNESCO and your message that we can take with us.
Heart of UNESCO's mandate, which focuses on, is this on? It's on. Which focuses on building the defenses of peace in the minds of men and women, which is, of course, a very noble mandate. And we do this through our work in terms of peace education, which forms what we are doing in terms of global citizenship education, our work on intercultural dialogue. And another area that I'd specifically like to mention, which is in terms of protection of cultural heritage and rebuilding cultural heritage. Just very quickly, we have a major initiative called Revive the Spirit of Mosul in Iraq, which was launched with the government of Iraq at a major international conference in Kuwait. We have funding from the UAE for about $50 million. And we recently just had another major international conference at UNESCO, bringing together a number of partners to work with this on this very important initiative. So we have partners from the Arab League. We have partners from ISESCO, which is the Islamic Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Again, Kuwait, Spain, Italy, and the EU and others are working with this. For UNESCO, it's really important that we look at the preservation and rebuilding of cultural heritage as a sense of identity, which can bring people together, but also in terms of promoting respect for cultural diversity and tolerance and more inclusive societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and we are proud to have published a South-South in Action with you, also with PICA, very recently, which is one of our flagship projects to systematize knowledge on South-South cooperation. So everyone is welcome to read all the details. Maybe before I go to Elder, can I take one question from the floor? If anyone is really burning to say something? Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm representing the training institution of the ILO. We are capacity building institution and work within the mandate of our organization. We are a political organization, but the point which I wanted to make is first, I would like to thank all the panelists. It was a very interesting discussion. We would benefit from individual meetings with some of them because it's very difficult to have more in-depth or individual, I would say, questions and discussions. But my question is related to the human factor, to the human resources preparation, skills development, capacity building, which is basically, we believe that in the center of all our actions on South-South or North-South cooperation is the individual development and the skills of people. In this context, we have regular training activities. For instance, Mr. De Costa would confirm we do academy on fragile states. He has attended them. Many other people probably know about our activities. But my question is how the people, and it's basically referring to all, on our panel sitting today, our distinguished guests, and would look at the issue of training, of skills development, of basically capacity building in sense of human resource development.
Maybe you want to direct the question to someone in particular, because we don't have time for everyone to give
I give them the freedom of the choice, you know, whoever wants to respond.
Maybe I can answer that question because in the Peacebuilding Fund, one of the biggest activities that we do is institution building, particularly post-conflict, post-political crisis, institution building, and also supporting, reforms that are being done to state institutions, to rebuilding their capacity. You know, again, here the key point is the whole process of sharing lessons and experiences and trying to make sure that the process of not only reforming, reorganizing those institutions is based on practice, learning from previous experiences. And one of the key things that we have done has been to try and make sure that that process of learning from other experiences, is well done. And also the process of analyzing and assessing capacities within those institutions and what needs to be done is very, very important. And for us, for example, it is important that we not only do it with a conflict lens, through a conflict lens, but also bring in the gender dimensions, which sometimes are underestimated in all these processes. I can actually just say that in all the projects that we support under the Peacebuilding Fund, one of the things that we do, we have a gender marker that makes sure that serious analysis has been done to assess how the gender dimensions of the interventions that we make. So definitely capacity building is a very important aspect of post-conflict or post-political crisis, peace building and peace consolidation. But it has to be done properly. There has to be the right analysis that has to be done, the right assessment, the right approaches have to be taken into account going forward. Thanks.
Can
I just quickly?
2 seconds.
Yeah, because I don't think there's one clear answer, one size fits all answer to that question. But it's always a combination of different things. For instance, we see capacity development not at the individual level or not only at the individual level, but it's a combination of individual capacity, institutional capacity, and capacity at the whole society. So it's a combination of everything. And it's also a combination of short-term training and long-term capacity building, human resources, including the education. And it's also, when we try to provide training, we have training program in mutual learning within the country, or triangular cooperation in different countries, and we have training courses back in Japan as well. So it's a combination of everything.
So we need to stop for now, but I want, before we go, and we may move to Qatar Lounge to continue exchanging if you want, and if everyone wants and have time. I want to give the floor to Elder Da Costa to give some closing remarks and final thoughts takeaways from this panel. Thank you so much for all of you, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. My name is El Da Costa. I'm the General Secretary of the G7+, the little G7+, which has 20 member states of post-conflict affected states ranging from the Pacific, Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. I'm sitting here listening how excited I am, in the sense that we are the new kid on the block, learning from such a rich experience coming from distinguished panelists. It is very hard to summarize 6 of them plus the others from the room. But if I can take away one keyword out of this, is that there is a desire to improve, enhance the South-South and triangular cooperation from the Southern perspective. You are the actors, and you are the leading forces. You are the policymakers, and you are the decision makers at your country. No one can come and tell you what is right and what is wrong. But you are the ones who come up with the initiatives and the creativity based on the spirit of collaboration, solidarity, and cooperation. When I see this South-South Triangle cooperation, starting from the opening session of Jorge Chedik this morning, that he was inspired by the G77 ministerial meeting, that there is no peace without sustainable development, and there can be no sustainable development without peace. And this is also emphasized by our colleague from PBSO, that in the next BAPA conference, if you can come up with that in the resolution, that it also strengthens the goal number 16, which is dealing with peace, justice, and strong institutions, something that we, the little G7+, is close to our heart as well. Coming from a different perspective for the little G7+, we also promoted so-called fragile-to-fragile cooperation, F2F, which is late in the next session we will be discussing about, based on the 3 Rome-based agencies side event, the next plenary. But what I can see from these, the commonality of these panels here, there is a strong desire. There are a lot of experience sharing going on between countries, bilaterally, multilaterally, or even triangular cooperation. But there is also untapped potential there that we can use, like, for example, the one that mentioned by Mr. Sorry about my name, Ryutaro from JICA. From his experience in 3 countries, Cambodia, Afghanistan, and also in South Sudan, one of them is one of our members, South Sudan. And also someone from the floor today mentioned about the experience of Sudan and South Sudan. If I may relate to my own country, Timor Leste, we had similar experience with Indonesia. And I'm glad that the panelists from Indonesia mentioned about the local initiative at the border level. This is exactly what we can add value in order to promote the so-called sustainable and durable peace. Because not only you talk about the relationship at the state level, G to G or government to government level, but you also talk about the local initiatives at the local level, and through the so-called the Enhanced Livelihoods project that Indonesia is promoting trilaterally between Indonesia, Norway, and UNDP. So the next point that I'd like to say is this, that coming from Madam Ospina from Colombia, she mentioned about experience with Argentina, using the transitional justice, sharing those experiences with the fellow countries who need it. But one thing that I can see, the commonality here, is that it's all coming from the expectation and also the desire from the country themselves. No one else can come and tell you what to do. I tell you, we the little G7+, when we launched the so-called the New Deal for Engagement in Fragile States in Busan in 2011, one of my fellow ministers coming from Sudan, he said this in 5 magic words. And what are they? Nothing about us without us. If you're a doctor, you come and diagnose me as I'm sick, I am the one who tell you what sickness I have, not you, the doctor, to tell me. You can prescribe the medicine, but you ask me first. This is exactly the spirit of South-South cooperation. And I'm so happy to see that such a rich experience ranging from the panelists from one to another, and it's very hard to summarize, but let me just very quickly highlight some of the main points. For example, from Indonesia, you mentioned about this trilateral initiative, but the main thing is that to promote peace building at the country level. And I can tell you, that model of not only the local initiative, but the peace and reconciliation model, which is very much also talked by the other panelists, between Indonesia and Timor Leste, it has been shared worldwide. It's become like a world model for other countries who can learn. This is a value added that those two countries can contribute in terms of learning from each other under the spirit of South-South cooperation. Correct me. My last point, it's very hard in 3 minutes to summarize the whole thing, but one thing that I'd like to propose, the way forward. I know that in South-South cooperation, Cecilia is an expert here in terms of bringing this forward to BAPA and so on. But if I may suggest, with the little G7+, we are going to have our senior official meeting of the Federation of States, 20 countries in Lisbon in 2 weeks' time. And I've invited Cecilia to come out to that meeting, bringing the aspirations of this group to share this with us. How can we cooperate and collaborate together? I have one practical suggestion to make. Ranging from the Asia, Africa, and the South America, I have 3 countries stand out that I can propose, that we can share experience. JICA has already done in Cambodia. Cambodia can be a good example for us to learn. Rwanda, our brother from Rwanda, you mentioned about Rwanda. 20 years ago, in one single day, there was a massacre for 1 million people. But now, Rwanda is becoming one of the countries that is most admired by the world because of your successful transition from a conflict towards a post-conflict. This is about peace. It's a successful story to tell. In Colombia, in South America, this is something. So if I can pick 3 countries that we can talk together under the spirit of this UNESCO peace and development solution, I think next year we can have some more success stories to tell. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elder, and thank you, everyone. I hope we can continue discussing ideas. If anyone can join us in the Qatar Lounge for a few minutes, but obviously the dialogue is open and we are ready to listen to you and work with you. Thank you for all the speakers, very interesting, and we continue. Thank you very much.